Margaret Williams pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Quantum Industries, the billion-dollar tech company that occupied the top 15 floors of Chicago's newest skyscraper. Her brown fingers gripped the handle tightly. The wheels squeaked softly in the empty corridor. It was 11 p.m. Everyone had gone home except the security guards and people like her. People nobody saw. Hello, friends. Welcome to Black Bite Stories. Like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. We love hearing from our family. She had been cleaning these halls for 3 years. Every night, same routine. Emptied the trash bins, vacuumed the carpets, wiped down the glass conference room walls. She moved through the building like a ghost, invisible. That's what janitors were supposed to be. Margaret had learned that lesson the hard way, but tonight was different. Tonight, as Margaret pushed open the door to conference room A, she found it wasn't empty. A man stood at the whiteboard, his expensive suit jacket thrown over a chair. His tie was loosened, his sleeves were rolled up. He stared at the board like it held the secrets of the universe. The entire surface was covered in complex mathematical equations, numbers, symbols, Greek letters Margaret recognized from another lifetime. She froze in the doorway. The man didn't turn around. Not now, he barked. I need another hour. Come back later. His voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Margaret nodded and started to back out. But her eyes caught on the equation. She couldn't help it. Her brain automatically started processing the numbers. There was an error. Right there in the third line, a small mistake that would cascade through the entire solution. She hesitated. Then she spoke. Sir, there's a mistake in your calculation. The man spun around. His eyes were bloodshot. Dark circles shadowed his face. Excuse me. His tone was sharp, dismissive. He looked at her uniform, the name tag that read simply maintenance. His lip curled slightly. I don't need cleaning advice. I need silence. I'm not talking about cleaning, sir. Your equation. The third line. You transposed the variables. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then his expression hardened. Do you have any idea who I am? He stepped toward her. I'm Richard Chen, CEO of this company. I have 2 PhDs from MIT, and you're telling me, a janitor, that my math is wrong? Margaret's face remained calm. She had learned long ago not to show emotion when people looked at her like that. I'm just saying there's an error, sir. That's all. She turned to leave. Wait. His voice stopped her. But it wasn't curiosity in his tone. It was anger. You know what? I'm tired. I've been working on this problem for 6 hours, and now the cleaning staff thinks they can lecture me on quantum mechanics. He laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Tell you what, if you're so smart, why don't you show me this error? It was a challenge, a trap. Margaret knew it, but something in her refused to back down. Not tonight. She had spent 3 years invisible. 3 years biting her tongue. 3 years pretending she was less than she was. She walked to the board. Richard crossed his arms and stepped back with a smirk. Margaret picked up a marker. Her hand moved quickly, confidently. She circled the error. Then she wrote out the correction in clean, precise strokes. The numbers flowed from her mind to the board like water. Richard's smirk faded. His eyes widened. He stepped closer. How did you ... His voice trailed off as he followed her work. She had not only found the error, she had solved the entire equation, a problem he had been struggling with for hours, solved in 90 seconds by a woman in a janitor's uniform. Who are you? He whispered. But Margaret was already putting down the marker. Her heart pounded. She had made a mistake, shown too much. I need to finish my shift, she said quietly. She turned toward her cart. "Stop!" Richard's voice was different now. "Urgent. Please. I need to know. Where did you learn this?" Margaret paused. She didn't turn around. "MIT," she said softly. "Class of 2008, PhD in theoretical physics. I was working on quantum field theory before, ... double quotes." She stopped. She had already said too much. Richard's face went pale. "You have a PhD from MIT, and you're working as a janitor." He sounded almost angry now, not at her, at something else. "Why? What happened?" Margaret finally turned to face him, her eyes usually carefully neutral, now burned with something Richard couldn't quite identify. Pain, pride, defiance. "My daughter got sick," she said. "Leukemia. I had a research position at the university. It paid well enough. But when Emily got diagnosed, I needed flexibility. I needed to be with her during treatments. I needed health insurance that covered experimental therapies." She gestured at her uniform. "This job gave me all that. Night shift means I'm home during the day when she needs me. The benefits are better than most universities offer, and nobody asks questions. Nobody expects anything from me except clean floors." Her voice cracked slightly. "So, I clean floors, and my daughter is alive." Richard stood frozen. The equation on the board suddenly seemed meaningless. "How old is your daughter?" he asked quietly. "She just turned 12. "She's been in remission for 8 months." Margaret's face softened when she spoke about Emily. "She wants to be a scientist, too. She doesn't know what I used to do. She just knows Mom works hard." "My God." Richard ran his hand through his hair. He looked at the equation again, then at Margaret, then back at the board. "Do you know what this equation is for?" Margaret shook her head. "It's not my business, sir." "It's for a quantum computing breakthrough. If we solve this, it could revolutionize data encryption. It could be worth billions." He laughed bitterly. "I've had 12 of the best minds in the company working on this for 3 months. We were about to give up. Tell our investors we failed." He looked at her with something close to awe. "And you solved it in 90 seconds. Margaret said nothing. She gripped her cart handle. "I really need to finish my shift, Mr. Chen." But Richard wasn't done. His mind was racing. "Wait, please. Just wait." He pulled out his phone. "I need to make a call." "Don't leave, please." Before Margaret could protest, he was dialing. "Dr. Sarah Kim." "Yes, I know it's late. I need you to come to the office. Now, conference room A. No, I'm serious. I think I just found the solution to the Hoffman problem, and I need you to verify something." 20 minutes later, Dr. Sarah Kim rushed into the conference room. She was a small Korean woman with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. "Richard, this better be good. I was sleeping." Then she saw the whiteboard. Her complaint died in her throat. She walked slowly toward the board. Her eyes scanned the equations. Margaret watched as the woman's expression changed from annoyance to confusion to shock. "This is correct," Sarah whispered. She turned to Richard. "Where did you get this solution?" Richard pointed at Margaret. "She did it." In 90 seconds, Sarah looked at Margaret, really looked at her for the first time, saw the uniform, the cleaning cart. Her eyes narrowed. "This is a joke." "It's not a joke," Richard said firmly. "Dr. Kim, meet Dr. Margaret Williams, MIT PhD, theoretical physics, currently employed as our night janitor." Sarah's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Margaret with new eyes. "You're serious?" Margaret nodded slowly. "I needed the health insurance." "For your daughter," Richard added. "She has leukemia." The room fell silent. Sarah walked to the board again. She studied the solution. "This is brilliant," she said quietly. "This isn't just solving the problem. This is elegant. This is the kind of thinking we've been missing." She turned back to Margaret. "How long have you been cleaning our offices?" 3 years. 3 years. Sarah's voice was thick with emotion, and nobody knew. Nobody asked. She looked at Richard. "We walk past people every day. We don't see them. We don't see who they really are." Richard's jaw tightened. He looked like a man coming to a decision. "Dr. Williams," he said formally, "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer." Margaret tensed. She expected to be fired, to be told she had overstepped. "Would you consider joining our research team?" Richard's words came out in a rush. "As a senior researcher, full salary, full benefits. Obviously better than what you're making now, and flexible hours. You can work from home when you need to be with Emily." Margaret stared at him. "What? You heard me?" Richard's voice was strong now, certain. "We need you, not as a janitor, as a scientist, as one of the lead researchers on the quantum computing project." He paused. "I know I was dismissive when you walked in. I know I judged you by your uniform instead of your mind. That was wrong, but I'm trying to make it right." Sarah nodded. "I'll second that. Margaret, I've been working on this problem for months. You solved it in the time it takes to make coffee. That's not luck. That's genius." She stepped forward. "We've been arrogant. We've built this company on the idea that the smartest people are the ones in corner offices. But intelligence doesn't care about job titles." Margaret's hands trembled. "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "Because it's right," Richard said simply. "And because we're fools if we let you walk out of here and go back to pushing a cleaning cart." He pulled out a chair. "Sit, please. Let's talk about salary. Let's talk about your daughter's medical needs. Let's talk about what you need to make this work." Margaret sat slowly. She felt like she was in a dream. Sarah sat across from her. "Tell us about your research at MIT. What were you working on before Emily got sick?" And for the first time in 3 years, Margaret talked about her dissertation, about the theories she had been developing, about the papers she had published. The words poured out of her like water from a broken dam. Sarah and Richard listened. They asked questions, smart questions, questions that treated her like a colleague, not like a janitor who stumbled into the wrong room. 2 hours later, they had a contract sketched out. Senior researcher position, salary that made Margaret's eyes water, full medical benefits that would cover any future treatments Emily might need, flexible schedule, home office setup, and something else Richard insisted on, a formal apology. "I want to address the entire company," Richard said. "I want to tell them what happened tonight. I want them to know that I almost lost a brilliant scientist because I was too blind to see past a uniform." He looked at Margaret. "If you're comfortable with that." Margaret thought about it. Then she nodded. "Yes, I think people need to hear this story." 3 days later, the entire company gathered in the main auditorium, all 500 employees. They didn't know why they were called. Rumors had been flying. Some thought there were layoffs coming. Others whispered about a merger. Richard stood at the podium. Margaret sat in the front row, wearing professional clothes for the first time in years. Sarah sat beside her. "I want to tell you a story," Richard began. 3 nights ago, I was working late. I was struggling with a problem that had stumped our best researchers for months. Our investors were getting nervous. I was getting desperate. He paused, and then the janitor walked in. The audience shifted. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I was rude to her," Richard continued. "I dismissed her. I told her to come back later, but she saw something on my whiteboard. She saw an error in my equation. And when I challenged her, angry and tired and arrogant, she solved it. She solved the Hoffman problem in 90 seconds. The murmurs grew louder. People craned their necks, looking around. That janitor was Dr. Margaret Williams. She has a PhD from MIT in theoretical physics. She's brilliant, and for 3 years, she's been cleaning our offices at night because she needed flexible hours. And good health insurance for her daughter, who was fighting leukemia. Richard's voice grew stronger. We walked past her every day. We didn't see her. We didn't see her brilliance because we saw her uniform instead of her mind. The auditorium was silent now. Every eye was on Richard. Today, I'm announcing that Dr. Williams is joining our research team as a senior scientist. She'll be leading the quantum computing division. Richard gestured to Margaret. "Please stand, Dr. Williams." Margaret stood. The applause started slowly. Then it built. People rose to their feet. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. When the noise finally died down, Richard spoke again. "I'm sharing this story because I want us all to learn from my mistake. We talk about diversity and inclusion. We talk about finding the best talent. But do we really see people? Do we really recognize genius when it's standing right in front of us wearing a maintenance uniform?" He looked directly at Margaret. "Dr. Williams, thank you. Thank you for solving my equation. Thank you for your grace when I was dismissive. And thank you for giving us a second chance to do the right thing." 6 months later, Margaret's team had completed the quantum computing breakthrough. The company's stock soared. Investors called it the innovation of the decade. But for Margaret, the real success was different. She worked from home 3 days a week. She was there when Emily came home from school. She helped with homework. She told her daughter stories about physics and math. And when Emily asked, "Mom, why did you stop being a scientist before?" Margaret had a new answer. "I didn't stop, baby. I just took a different path for a while. But the beautiful thing about science, about knowledge, is that it never leaves you. It was always there, waiting for the right moment to come back." Emily hugged her tight. "I'm glad you're a scientist again, Mom. You're really good at it." Margaret laughed. "You know what I learned, though? I learned that there are brilliant people everywhere, in every job, every position. The mistake is thinking that intelligence only exists in certain places or certain titles." One evening, Richard stopped by her office before leaving. "I wanted to show you something," he said. He handed her a framed photograph. It was the whiteboard from that night, the equation she had solved. Below it, a plaque read, "Intelligence has no uniform. Genius has no title. Never stop looking, never stop listening." "I'm putting this in the lobby," Richard said, "so every person who walks into this building remembers to see people, really see them." Margaret traced the frame with her finger. "You know what the hardest part was?" she said quietly. "Not the work, not the long hours, or the difficult patience. It was being invisible. It was watching people look right through me, like I didn't exist." "You were never invisible," Richard said. "We were just blind." Margaret smiled. "Then I'm glad you opened your eyes." That night, as Margaret drove home, she thought about the journey, from researcher to janitor to researcher again. She thought about the people who never got a second chance, the brilliant minds lost in jobs that didn't see them, the talents wasted because someone judged a book by its cover. She thought about Emily, healthy and laughing, about the medical bills that were finally manageable, about the future that had seemed so dark 3 years ago and now shined bright with possibility. When Margaret came home, Emily ran to her. "Mom, I got an A on my science test." Margaret hugged her proudly. Later, Emily whispered, "I want to be like you, a scientist who helps people." Margaret smiled. "You can be anything. Just stay true to who you are, even when the world doesn't see it." That night, after Emily slept, Margaret opened Richard's contract and began joyfully working on a new theorem. The next morning, Richard announced a new initiative to find overlooked talent. Months later, it transformed the company. On its anniversary, he toasted Margaret, proof that brilliance can come from anywhere. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for seeing me. But more than that, thank you for learning to see everyone, for recognizing that intelligence, creativity, and genius exist everywhere, in every person, in every place. We just have to open our eyes." The celebration continued late into the evening, but Margaret left early. She had somewhere important to be. Emily had a school science fair. Margaret wouldn't miss it for the world. As she drove to the school, Margaret thought about the janitor's uniform still hanging in her closet at home. She hadn't thrown it away. It was a reminder of humility, of sacrifice, of the truth that a person's worth isn't determined by their job title. She pulled into the school parking lot. Through the window, she could see Emily standing proudly beside her project. The girl's face lit up when she saw her mother. Margaret walked inside, and for the first time in years, she walked with her head high. Not because her title had changed, but because she had never let her circumstances define her truth. She was brilliant then. She was brilliant as a janitor, and she was brilliant now. The only thing that had changed was that finally the world could see what had always been there.